At the time, there were some serious family issues going on with the emperors, lots of killing each other, and sex. As things were starting to heat up, Gaius Julius Caesar, also known as Caligula, was born to Germanicus and Agrippina. He had 2 brothers, Nero and Drusus, and later had 3 younger sisters, Agrippina, Julia Drusilla, and Julia Livilla. Soon after, Tiberius, the emperor at the time, supposedly poisoned Germanicus because he saw him as a political rival. 10 years later, Nero and his mother were banished for treason, so only Caligula, Drusus, and his 3 sisters remained. But a year later, Drusus was also imprisoned for treason, and this is also around the time Nero died, either by starvation or suicide. Caligula is also known for having close relations to his sisters. I'm talking about incest, guys. Anyway, it's thought that because he grew up as an orphan and basically imprisoned with his 3 sisters, that he grew close to them, particularly with Julia Drusilla. The next year, Tiberius called for Caligula to serve under his personal care. You can imagine how much that would hurt, having to be around the person that was basically responsible for taking away and killing half your family. But Caligula knew of the danger he would be in if he showed any sort of resentment toward Tiberius, and was able to mask it quite well. This continued on for 6 years until Tiberius died. The terrible reign of Tiberius had ended, and with this, Caligula became emperor. The people were happy, partly just because they had someone other than Tiberius as emperor, but also because he was the son of the beloved Germanicus. To start off the whole thing, Caligula decided to make a public appearance, something Tiberius hadn't done for a while. Tiberius mostly neglected everything to do with being emperor, and lived a good portion of his reign in a villa of Capri outside of Rome. It was said that as Caligula was entering in the city, the people lined out to the 20th mile marker, cheering and calling him our baby and our star. He really started off with a bang. Lower taxes? Sure. Military bonuses? Of course. He recalled those who had been sent to exile, and those treason trials, those are a thing of the past. The people in Rome no longer feared daily for their lives and property. Everything was going a-okay, and the first 7 months of Caligula's reign were said to have been completely blissful. Around 7 months into Caligula being emperor, he became deathly ill. People were sad and praying for his recovery. Some of the descendants even asked the gods to take them instead. "Oh Mars, please take me instead of our beloved Caligula." And wouldn't you know, a month later he recovered. It was around this time that Caligula probably had the realization of his own mortality and thought, "Oh crap, what am I wasting my time for? I need to become a better emperor than Tiberius." Better at being bad. The sentence that made those often empty claims of wishing to die for someone else, Caligula took this literally and basically said to them, "Well, I'm alive now, so what are you doing here? What would the gods think of you breaking your promise?" They were basically forced to kill themselves. Soon after this, his sister Julia Drusilla died. Because he was so close to her, this was another turning point for the worse of Caligula. Unlike Tiberius, who tried to downplay his power and defer to the Senate as much as possible, Caligula was kind of the opposite, trying to belittle and elevate himself from them, oftentimes forcing them to wait on him, having them run next to his chariot, and if they didn't show up or show enough enthusiasm, would be targeted for future humiliations. He even went as far as to invite them over for dinner, only to pick one of their wives, take her to another room, then come back and explain in great detail what had just gone down, all the while forcing the husband to remain cheerful. I would like to think he just took her in the back to show her his shoe collection. He was called Caligula for a reason, but he probably just had sex with her. He also said he planned to make his horse consul. This was most likely said jokingly as an insult, that his horse would do a better job than them. He did apparently make him a priest, though. Any question of Caligula's whim was quickly becoming a capital offense. He began reenacting the treason trials. Remember how I destroyed those treason papers? Apparently he made copies. He used them to figure out who among the sentence were suspicious, according to Tiberius. Anyone who said anything bad about the emperor was at risk, and later he even went as far as banishing his 2 remaining sisters and other distant family, though he kept his uncle alive, Claudius, because he saw him as a laughingstock. Remember this for later. So once again, there was a looming threat of having your estate taken away and either exiled or executed. He would force parents to watch their children get executed, and the executions themselves, they weren't the run-of-the-mill killings. He often promoted death by 1,000 cuts, where your major organs are left alone as you're cut, stabbed, and bled over the course of sometimes days. Caligula often ordered to make him feel as though he is dying. Speaking of family, Caligula had 4 wives, 2 of which were stolen. The most famous one is Livia or Estella. He was invited to her wedding, and during the celebration, he decided to steal her for himself. He announced the next day that he had a new wife in tradition of Rumilius and Augustus, both of which also had stolen wives, only to dump her the next day and forbid the original guy to remarry her. Bridging the gap of these events, he built a bridge over 2 miles long across the Bay of Baiae. Using ships as pontoons, he rode his horse across it while wearing Alexander the Great's chest plate. He did this despite one of Tiberius's astrologers, who said Caligula would have as much chance of becoming emperor as riding his horse across the Bay of Baiae. This would be all fun and games, but Rome suffered from a grain shortage due to the lack of available boats. Anyway, Caligula began making divine claims, sometimes appearing in public dressed as Hercules, Apollo, Mercury, and sometimes even Venus. He began speaking as though he was a god stuck on Earth with all these mortals, and even ordered a statue of him be placed in every temple. Caligula also had the heads of various statues of gods across Rome removed and replaced with his own. Being an imperator without having military triumphs to point to is like calling yourself a ball that is unable to roll around. It doesn't make sense. So he decided to go on a campaign and continue what his father did and go fight some Germans. He managed to cross the Rhine, but didn't venture too far into the forests. At some point, he ordered some allies, the Gauls, to dress up as Germans and charge them. When they came out from the woods, Caligula bravely charged into them and later bragged to the camp about how brave he was compared to the rest of the soldiers. Later, there were reports that real Germans were in the area. Scared of an actual fight, he packed up camp and went back to Rome's side of the Rhine. He decided to direct his attention toward Britannia, the foggy island at the edge of the world. According to legend, he lined up his soldiers in battle formation along the banks of the English Channel. Caligula then ordered his men to attack, making his soldiers stab the water and sand, and then ordered them to collect seashells as spoils of victory over Neptune and the sea. Anyway, he went back to Rome, where some more fun went on for a while, until the situation had escalated when Caligula announced that he planned to leave Rome permanently and move to Alexandria in Egypt, where he hoped to be worshipped as a living god. This was sort of the final straw, and they assassinated him. Suetonius records that Caligula's death resembles that of Julius Caesar, stating that both of the assassinations of the elder Gaius Julius Caesar, and the younger Gaius Julius Caesar, Caligula, were stabbed 30 times, and both led by men named Cassius Longinus and Cassius Chaerea. Definitely not confusing at all. The Senate tried to use Caligula's death as an opportunity to restore the Republic, but the military remained loyal to the idea of an imperial monarchy. The Senate were like, oh shoot, we better kill everyone related to Caligula then, and they assassinated his wife, Caesonia, and killed their daughter, Julia Drusilla. Yeah, she was named after his sister, by smashing her head against the wall. They were unable to reach Caligula's uncle, Claudius, remember him, who a soldier found hiding behind a palace curtain, at which point he was transported out of the city and into a Praetorian Guard camp, out of reach of the assassins. So yeah, Claudius, the olive-brained guy that was kept around by Tiberius and Caligula as a laughingstock, he's now emperor. As smooth-brained as he acted around everybody, when he became emperor, he actually turned out to be a competent emperor. Thus concludes the story of Caligula. Goodbye.